All right, as promised, I am back. And like I said, there would be a part 2 to SZA. So this part 2 for the episode on SZA is astrological timing of SZA's biggest hits. Specifically, I'm talking about her albums and where she really broke out. And that was what I wanted to go over in terms of her. And I do want to mention, though, I just in case you don't really know who she is, I would imagine if you clicked on this video, you do know who she is. SZA is an American singer, songwriter. She first gained recognition through her self-released EP, SZA Run, which helped her to become the first female artist to sign with Top Dog Entertainment. And since then, she has a joint recording contract with RCA Records, and SZA has released a debut album, Control, in 2017. And from there, she continued to gain critical and commercial success. So that's just a little blurb about her. And so in this episode, I'm going to talk about that album, Control, in 2017, and the album SOS in 2022. And what was going on astrologically for her during those time periods. So first, now I did notice in terms of transits, that mean the planets that were transiting around her birth chart at the time, she had Saturn in 11th. And this would help her achieve goals and long-term wishes. I think she'd been working, and as most artists do, especially music artists, they have to work on their craft for a very long time before they actually break out, have a big hit most of the time. And if you saw someone break out quickly, they probably burned out just as quickly. They're usually the one-hit wonders that you hear about. But usually the people that have staying power, that have longer careers, it takes them a while to get there. And so I believe this is the case for SZA. She also had, during the Control album 2017, when it was released, she had a transiting Uranus in her second house. And this represents, to me, unexpected promotion at work, becoming self-employed, or financially independent. It's usually what this revolves around. And to me, Uranus can feel spontaneous, feel like comes out of nowhere, seem like a surprise, or it could just be like a crossroads. Like she finally reached a crossroad where she was able to get to that next step in her career. Now, in terms of comparing her birth chart to her solar return chart, or what I like to call yearly chart, she had solar return Mercury conjunct her birth chart MC, or midheaven. And so to me, this represents news about her career specifically. Then she had her solar return moon conjunct her north node. Now, again, I've touched on the north node before, and I have never really done a full video on north node. But what I will say is, I've mentioned before, I believe, that whenever I see a planet really close to a north node, whether it's in the birth chart or the solar return chart, or when I put the two together and I see two planets, a planet close to the north node, to me that means that I should pay attention, because usually there's something about that area, the house, the planets involved, that says something about what their year is going to be like, especially when it's mapping the solar return chart around the birth chart. So for her, the moon represents the gains from her career and her work, and this work it suggested that this work would provide some type of security for her, and that would lead to a strong fan base that supports her career. Now, if you watch the other video, you know that I've talked about how I felt like her emotional honesty and her creative work has led a big part of what has led to her strong fan base. So it basically, this point, it was time for her hard work to pay off. And that's basically what happened. A couple other things during the Control era where her album was released. Solar return Pluto conjunct natal or birth chart Neptune. this meant to me generating something that would had a powerful effect on others. Neptune was in its home, home, being the fact that her Neptune is in her birth chart. Neptune is in the 12th house, and 12th house is associated with the sign Pisces. Pisces is ruled by the planet Neptune. That's what I mean by it's in its home house. So this allowed her to delve into different thoughts that maybe people don't say out loud. Things like that, to do things like that with her music and allow her to make an impact that way. Solar return Neptune also, solar return Neptune conjunct the birth chart moon or the natal moon. And this, to me, this is a good reference to putting complicated, emotions to music and benefiting from it. And again, her solar return ascendant, or her solar return first house, that's where the Neptune is. And so to me, hold on, I'm sorry. Let me go back. It's actually in the 6th house. I take that back. I was going ahead looking at the wrong one. So the one for solar return chart for 2016 and 2017, which covers that control era, that Neptune is in her 6th house, which again is why I'm thinking, hey, this is more about the work. And Neptune, to a large extent, does have to do with music. And this, to me, this represents her being able to use her music and to create music that is beneficial to her financially, and she becomes successful in that. All right. So that's basically what I got from the Control album, that she had transits to 11th house, which rules gains, 2nd house, which rules earned income. And there was the North Node connection between the solar return moon and the North Node. To me, says a lot about where she was headed and what she was ready for, especially since the 6th house, the solar return 6th house, was involved. Okay, so the next one and the last album, the last one I'm going to do a breakdown on, because these are the two bigger albums in her career. SOS, which was released in 2022. So for that one, let me go down, make sure I'm at the right one. So for that one, she had transiting Jupiter in her 2nd house. So now Uranus was out of the 2nd house. Now Jupiter is in the 2nd house with this next album. And this is improvements in financial situation. So there's another opportunity for a boost financially. And then she had transiting Saturn in the 1st house. And that was, to me, generally it represents soul searching, life review, introspection, self-discovery, things along that nature. And Saturn can be, I don't want to say dark, but in a way it is dark. It can be depressive. And if you've listened to her album or any of the songs in her album, you know that some of those songs are, they express some darker thoughts, some angrier thoughts, some introspective moments or whatever. It is along the lines of what we already know and expect from SZA. And also note her solar return Saturn is conjunct her North Node. So we went from her solar return moon being conjunct her North Node in 2017 to her solar return Saturn being conjunct her North Node. And so that made me pay a lot of attention to that as well, because like I said, whenever I see a planet close to the North Node, to me that expresses that the person has to do something. There's something specific that the person's working on, that they have to do, something that should be taking place that year. And so to me, that was an area of focus. A need to bring the difficulties of love, heartbreak, the fallout, and all of the fallout regarding that. To me, that pretty much is what that represents. It was a way to unload the weight of insecurities and feelings of despair and anger. And again, that makes me think about songs like Kill Bill. It makes me think about, I think it was I Hate You. Things like that, like the really negative parts of relationships. Seek and Destroy. Like if you have not listened to any of these songs, and maybe you are aware of SZA, or you only slightly aware, never heard her songs, go listen to those songs from the SOS album, and you'll understand exactly what I'm saying about the depths of despair in relationships. A clear indication that relationships are not always easy, and how some of us think about it. Maybe somehow some of us want to handle it. Hopefully cooler heads prevail, right? But just an honest expression of those emotions and those feelings, and how they impact us internally, and just working through it the best that you can work through it. All right, in transiting Uranus in third is what she had when she released SOS. To me, this represents writing, because the third house tends to rule communication. That includes writing and speaking, or sharing ideas with others. She also had her solar return DNA conjunct North, not North, but natal Chiron. These are two probably very unfamiliar areas if you're very new to astrology. I don't usually talk about them a whole lot, but I do talk about them periodically, because sometimes they do kind of pop up in a way that makes you think, okay, probably should talk about that. But in my opinion, this references insecurities that she has, healing herself and learning to and sharing it with others, basically. And there's a connection to the ninth house here, exploring these different subjects, almost like a teacher or a guru or a guide, by talking about it. And it makes me think of what's the quote or the saying, "You're only as sick as your secrets." That's what it makes me think about. Chiron being a wounded healer, and that's what I mean about the guide and the guru. Where Chiron is, that's usually where your wounds are, from an astrological standpoint. If you're not familiar with Chiron in your chart, the house it's in is where your wounds are. And there's a belief that, wherever you're wounded, you can always heal yourself and then go out and heal others. And so that's where I'm seeing her healing herself and teaching other people how to heal themselves as well. And DNA, as I mentioned in another video, what I've read is supposed to have to do with genealogy. Sometimes there's a reference to having a child, but she didn't have a child this time. She released an album. Now, depending on what you're thinking, maybe you can consider that almost like having a child, giving birth to a child, giving birth to something creative. Child, pregnancy, and creativity is represented in the same house, and that's the fifth house. So in some ways, astrology tends to tie certain things together, and that's one of those things that kind of ties together. And so for her, being able to create this thing that expresses areas that need to be healed and dealt with, that's what this is about to me. There's like a big event or a situation associated around identifying a wound and trying to heal that wound. And perhaps that's why things like Kill Bill and I Hate You and Seek and Destroy are really about, especially Seek and Destroy. I recommend listening to it and also finding the lyrics, because it's pretty deep. The song is all about a relationship going bad and a person finding joy in making things worse, and being, basically being like, I'll be your villain. We're going to have this relationship go terrible. I'm not going to reason anymore. I'm going to make it the worst that I can. I'm going to destroy everything that I can. And then that's going to make me feel better. That's what I'm getting from that. So it gets very complicated from that perspective, but just working through that. And that's something that SZA does a lot, is working through complicated emotions through her music. And so to me, the solar return DNA conjunct the natal Chiron, the wounded healer, suggesting that she was going to take on this big task of trying to identify something that's a wound and try to figure out how to heal it for herself and probably for other people as well. Has a big impact for her and for other people. So moving on, I got a few more left. So solar return houses duplicate the birth chart houses. So basically what I'm saying is, if you look at it, you can see that her solar return charts, their charts almost duplicate themselves. The ascendant for the solar return chart is very close to the ascendant to the birth chart. The fourth house, or the IC, is very close to the beginning of the IC in the natal house or the birth chart house. So all of the houses kind of match up, and that doesn't happen all the time. The houses kind of move around. The solar return houses move around, and they end up in different houses for from the birth chart. Like, for instance, in 2017, it was her sixth house that was in her natal solar return sixth house that was in her natal first house. And then by 2022, the solar return first house is in her natal first house. So there was this change. Now, the last time I won't say the last time, but I remember seeing this before. The first time I would say I saw this was actually with Whitney Houston. And I may still do an episode on her. And this happened in a really, really big year in her life. Big year professionally speaking. So, and then, all right, so the next thing was solar return Venus conjunct natal Sun, natal Pluto. And I talked about in another video, she has Sun conjunct Pluto in her birth chart. That means digging deeper and giving a voice to frustrations and broadcasting them. Broadcasting them because her natal Sun and Pluto are in her ninth house. Ninth house is associated with publishing and broadcasting. And so her broadcasting was not on TV, right? It wasn't on the news. It was through her music. And it is a form of like publishing and broadcasting. Publishing, there is a such thing as publishing in music, if you're not familiar. When an artist writes their own music, they do get publishing for that, publishing royalties that in some cases are separate from their recording or performance royalties. Hopefully, there's different contracts out there that might change that. But ideally, their publishing is separate from their recording or performance of the work, right? So this is a form of publishing in a way. And solar return Venus usually is associated with some type of music or doing something that's considered beautiful or likable, or something that people enjoy. And a lot of people enjoy her music. She won a Grammy for her performance and for SOS, specifically for the song Snooze. Another very complicated song. I recommend listening to it. A very nice song. Nice probably isn't the word I should use, is it? If you listen to it, especially the first verse, is very, very Scorpio, very Sun conjunct Pluto and Scorpio-ish. So definitely listen to it if you haven't heard it before. I do think you would enjoy the song because it is well produced and well written. And I do like the song. A very strong song in terms of the sentiments expressed in it. But it is definitely digs deep in terms of how someone feels. Goes beyond the whole, hey, I love you, I miss you, I need you in my life, to going to the extreme of saying that, hey, I kill someone for you and I'd lie on the stand for you. A very Scorpio Plutonic way, right, of addressing your love and dedication and loyalty for someone. So the Sun conjunct Pluto being a part of that makes a lot of sense in that way. Last but not least is solar return Mercury conjunct the natal Mercury, the Mercury in the birth chart. So that's, again, that falls in that 9th house of the broadcasting and the publishing part. And so I would say that house was particularly important. It was important in her birth chart, and the year that SOS came out, it was important as well. So in the broadcasting being a source of like broadcasting traumas and crisis, even sexuality, especially since Mercury in her birth chart, and even in the solar return chart, rules her 8th house, and 8th house is associated with crisis and trauma, and those things that we deal with, that we're hiding because we're afraid to tell people about it. They don't know if they're going to judge us or what they're going to say about us, or they won't like us anymore, or maybe we have traumas that we're not willing to deal with, and we won't talk about it with people because we don't even want to think about it. Sometimes we run away from those types of things. So it's along those lines of really digging into those things, those areas that you don't want to go, the things that you don't usually say, and saying it and putting it to music and making it make sense in the music, and allowing people to hear and go, okay, I see. I'm going to make a prediction. I predict that one day, at some point, SZA's music will probably be studied in colleges. If they're not being studied yet, I think at some point they probably will, just because of the approach she takes with her songwriting and her music. I'm just making that prediction. I haven't really looked at a birth chart to determine that or anything, but just the way that she goes about expressing what she expresses is unique to her for a lot of reasons. Unique to her personality wise, but unique also as in how she goes about it and putting it to music and allowing people to enjoy it. The songs are really well produced and very melodic, and she sings over it well. So even though the lyrics sometimes are very controversial, they are accepted because of what it's cloaked in, I guess you could say. So that's what I'm getting from that too. Astrological timing in terms of why those albums did so well for her. As I explained in the other video, she was due for that. She was focused on that. She was determined to succeed. And yes, she had to do it herself, but I feel like in our birth charts, it tells us what we're most likely to do. It tells us who we are, and based on who we are, that's what we're most likely to do. And so her chart says to me that she was focused on a career, so focused on creating, using her voice to express complicated emotions and feelings in a way that could be healing for other people. So, and that's basically what she did. So, in terms of if you're wondering if she was destined for success and stardom, I would say to some extent, yes. Yes, she was destined to do it the way that she's doing it now. All right. So leave a comment. Let me know what you think, what popped out to you about her birth chart, solar return chart, what you noticed, what you had questions about. I would love to continue to explore her chart as well as other people's charts. So let me know what you think, and I will see you next time. Bye.